Going fast here. Hola, Puebla. How will we make babies in the future? Humans are a storytelling species. We use images to tell stories about who we are, how we see ourselves, and how we look at ourselves in our place on this planet and in the universe. We use images to do so. We are a mythological species. We are a myth-making species. And some of these myths are sustained also in popular culture, including myths around fertility, childbirth, pregnancy. But I sometimes believe that we also live in an area where we believe in different types of myths. For instance, technology is one of those myths. And the idea, the belief that we can just make everything, we can solve any problem, we can end suffering. I think that's one of the mythologies of our time. But I like to see technology a little bit different. I sometimes think that technology is the ultimate self-portrait of humanity. Now the question is, do we still recognize ourselves in this image? I, as a designer, I'm extremely interested in how new technologies will change the way we tell stories about ourselves. And I want to share a movie that shows an example of one of those technologies. And it aired about a year ago on April 25th, 2017. It was a video made by the Philadelphia Children's Hospital. What we're looking at here is a lamb fetus in a plastic bag, connected to tubes that feed the lamb nutrition, oxygen, and it contains an amniotic fluid in which the fetus lives. Now, always when I show this image in lectures and workshops, people have very strong responses to it. I don't know how that's with you. People roughly fall into two categories. The first says like, oh, this is ugly, take it away, I can't see it. The other half is like, this is also very interesting because I'm looking at something very essential, life coming into being, and it's now becoming transparent. It shows me a new perspective, almost like the first astronauts that went into space and saw the Earth from a perspective that nobody had seen before. So I decided to do a little bit of research. And I found out that the idea of having a pregnancy outside the body is already almost 100 years old. And the term ectogenesis means birth outside an organism's body, was coined by a biologist, J.B.S. Haldane, in 1924. And he was very good friends with Aldous Huxley, the writer of the famous science fiction novel Brave New World that features humans bred in glass bottles. A bit dystopian scenario. I also found out that an artificial womb was already patented in 1955. It's quite long ago. And if we simplify this drawing a little bit, what do we have? A container that contains amniotic fluid in which the fetus lives. Nutrition and oxygen have to go in on one side, and waste has to go out on the other side. Plus, of course, we need some kind of interface to control all this. And of course, that's a designer's job. Now, how should we understand this technology? One way is to look at already existing reproductive technologies, such as contraceptives. Early in the 20th century, they disconnected sex from reproduction. Technologies such as artificial womb might go even further and also disconnect reproduction from the body. So on one hand, we see a continuation of a process that we've already started. On the other hand, it's also a very disruptive idea, and a disruption of many things that we think are natural, normal, humane, desirable even. So, yeah, is this a direction where we should even want to proceed as humanity? Of course, there's a lot of things to be said here. Apart from all the technicalities that it's extremely difficult to connect a living organism to a machine, there's also a lot of ethical questions that, of course, are raised through this. What happens to the concept of bodily integrity when a child is no longer in your body but outside it? What about the bond between mother and child? Those kind of questions immediately come up. On the other hand, there are also scientists and doctors that believe that this technology could save the lives of thousands, if not millions, of premature infants. And I'm working with a hospital in the Netherlands that are setting the first steps in building an artificial womb. And they say that every day that you can keep a premature infant in a fluid will dramatically increase their chances of survival and also dramatically decrease the chances of heart diseases, lung diseases, etc. But then, of course, there's another argument. I think there's a huge opportunity to research this and to maybe learn something about what it means to be human. And maybe that's something that we have done all the time as humankind. So once again, technology also here in this field will be a driver of cultural change. And as we've learned from the previous presentation, this is not new. We've been doing it for years. The alchemists, they tried to conceive human life in a glass flask. The first baby incubators looked more like steam engines. Look at what they are now. We've learned to control hormonal cycles in our bodies. And yes, Louise Brown, the first IVF baby, has turned 40 this summer, and millions of babies after have been put on Earth. But this is the past. And if we look at technologies that are now emerging on the horizon, and we've just learned a few, what picture emerges? That's the idea of cell regeneration, making cells live longer, which dramatically increases, well, our age, but also the window of opportunity to become pregnant, for instance. And there's more. Reprogramming our skin cells into sperm and eggs, reprogramming our genetic codes. But it's not all technology. We're also talking about new lifestyles. We see patchwork families coming up, new relationship styles, polyamory, people having relationship with more than one person. Might sound a bit exotic, but it's happening. It's a reality for some. So the sum of all this, where might this lead to? Are we going to some kind of dark science fiction future where humans lay kind of glowing eggs in dark spaceships? I'm not sure if that's a very desirable future. So maybe we should consider some alternatives. I think the question is, or it starts with, in which kind of society would we want to live? And I want to do a little thought experiment with you. Now, if you would consider that you are born again on this planet, but you don't know if you're going to be born a man or a woman, would you be born rather in society A, where half of the population bears all the risks, burdens and privileges that come with the production of a new generation? And of course, every organism needs a new generation. It's kind of a collective thing. Or would you rather be born in society B, where we have optimized reproductive technology and routinely use it, and all the risks and burdens, but also the privilege, have been distributed a little bit more evenly among everyone involved? So that's a thought experiment you can do with yourself. Now, I think society A, we more or less know already how that looks like. It's society where we live in. Society B, for me, is one big question mark, because I don't know how that looks like. That's why I'm a designer. I use design to envision these kind of scenarios, not so much to predict the future, but to explore those futures. And I would like to invite you to come with me to explore Reproductopia, an imaginary country where the inhabitants might have very different ideas about making babies, experiencing intimacy, building families and relationships. The technologies that they will use might be very well integrated in their homes, almost like some kind of IKEA design. We will see probably new interactions between man and machine, with maybe perhaps also a whole new role for the fathers in this whole process. We might see even male pregnancies, a gay couple having a genetically identical child by themselves without the help of any surrogate mothers. And yes, maybe we'll also see designer babies. How will they look like? Will they have some kind of other physical traits like gills, like fish? Or where do we draw the line? Where do we stop? And we could even go to very extreme scenarios, like the artist Ai Hasegawa from Japan, who said to herself, well, I might put another human on this planet, but I could also lend my reproductive abilities to helping an endangered species. And of course, this is an art project. It's meant to provoke. It projects an idea that we can respond to. But it asks also a question to us: how far do we want to go in this field? What is possible and what is preferable? And what are these stories that we tell ourselves? So I'd like to come back to this image, but maybe reframe it a little bit. Because we can ask ourselves, if birds lay eggs, why should humans not do that? That's an open question. We don't have to answer it right now. I just want to provide you with 4 scenarios from nature that might guide us into how we want reproductive technologies in our lives. We know that like the bees and the flowers have co-evolved. Also humans have co-evolved with technology. So what are some options? Will we be like the kangaroos, carrying our children not so much in our bodies, but close to our bodies? Will we become like the seahorses, some kind of gender-neutral species that can just harvest some skin cells and reprogram into sperm and eggs, so we technically don't need a partner anymore to reproduce? What will that do to our conception of relationships, marriage, and so on? Or will we find cultural solutions, like the penguins did, where the males breed the egg, where the females go out hunting for fish? Now, back to technology. I want to propose a model that I've developed, and it's called Pyramid of Technology. And it shows how technology becomes nature in 7 steps. Starting at the bottom, where technology only exists as an idea, like that human egg. And you can compare this maybe to time machines. Time traveling does not exist, yet we can speak about it because it has been envisioned in novels, in movies. Artists have envisioned that, put their creativity to it. So we can, it's there as an idea. The lamp in that bio bag, it exists. It's operational, but it only exists in the laboratory. It's very far still from our daily realities. If that ever will happen, we don't know yet. It's still in that early stage. But it might be that one day it will be as accepted as, for instance, IVF. That is now, it's still expensive, it's still an invasive procedure, but it's widely accepted in most parts of society. Or even like the concept of birth control, that sits really high here up the pyramid, that it's almost not recognized as technology anymore. It almost becomes invisible and becomes so ingrained with ourselves. I don't know where this technology will go to, but it might very well be that reproductive technologies, such as artificial womb, will also have their journey through the pyramid. And it's a question mark how they will look like when they reach the top of the pyramid. Because I think in the end, really sufficiently evolved technologies will become part of our human nature. Thank you very much.